One of these fascinating things when I think of, and it was in large part, someone was just before this talk asking me about brands, and I referred to Carl Jung, because I think in large part marketing is about figuring out how the human mind works. And one of the most fascinating concepts I came across in marketing and then started thinking about its application all across is how we process the world in terms of archetypes. How many of you are familiar with the word archetypes? Not too many. So the interesting thing about archetypes is that as a concept, it's what most of us will be familiar with the word, but in terms of how it's understood, I've put up some examples there. So you say the freedom of the explorer, and all of us have a visual of someone trying to climb a mountain or someone riding a bike into nowhere and stuff like that. For example, if I ask someone, if I ask any of you that if Sachin Tendulkar were to be a character in the Mahabharata, who would he be? Can I get a voice answer?
Arjun.
Yeah, I hear Arjun. Had it been someone else, this presentation would have gone slightly awry. So thank you. But yeah, so the thing is, all of us say Arjun, and it's fascinating. It's this whole world where fact and fiction and everything gets processed together and gets reduced, and you say, yes, this is that archetype. And it's so interesting as a concept. It's what most of those brands are based on. When people say they love Paper Boat and how authentic it is, the underlying concept is it has an archetype. It is very authentic. So again, similarly here, what I'm trying to say is that we process the world in terms of these archetypes, and sometimes what happens is that people start. So I'll just quickly name some archetypes to get this conversation better going. So think of the rebel, and the rebel, as soon as you think of, the rebel is someone who's saying this whole system, has these problems and I'm going to change it. And then there's the hero who's saying, yeah, come with me and we will fix this. They're probably addressing the same problems but in very different ways. And then there's the sage. The sage today is, say, someone who's sitting somewhere and writing some code, is a nerd, is probably knows everything there is to know about Batman and can talk to you about the difference between Batman and Iron Man for 4 hours. He's a sage, or she's a sage. Now the point is, all around us we process the world in terms of these archetypes, and I've been fascinated by the emergence in our country of the archetype of the entrepreneur. Could you go on? And then I start thinking about it, and when people think of me as the entrepreneur, they expect to see someone who's an outsider who said, yeah, I've had enough of the corporate world, I'm going to do my own thing. They see someone who's like a savior, like someone who's making great stuff and changing the world. They also see someone who's the explorer, like I said, up on the mountain. And then there's the creator, Tesla. So I'll just quickly side note. I had the picture of Che Guevara on the Rebel, and then I thought there are no women on my slide, and that's unfair because, and then I started thinking, and therefore that's Pussy Riot. How many of you know Pussy Riot? Thank you, someone knows, yeah. So basically, for me, the entrepreneur, what it is fast becoming, is this super archetype. It's almost like Nietzsche's Uberman, where you say this person is bigger than all others, and there is this whole mythology which has evolved around the entrepreneur, and that troubles me sometimes because no one is a super archetype. I was trying to think of how to establish that point in a more interesting way, because this might be getting too dense. How many of you have seen Inglourious Bastards? It's funny how I can say that word when it's the name of a film. Let me just move on to the next slide. Enough people have seen it. I'll just recite this dialogue right at the end. Basically, Aldo Rain, Brad Pitt in the film, he's been captured, and Christoph Waltz has made this great offer to him, and his response is written there. It's in very small text, so I'll read it. Brad Pitt did a terrible southern accent in the film. I'll try not to do it because mine will be worse, because I'm nowhere close. So Aldo Rain says, where I'm from, and then there's this interesting reaction. where Colonel Hans Landa says, oh, where is that exactly? Because suddenly he realizes that his nemesis of so many years, he doesn't know where he grew up. And this guy says, yeah, this place in Tennessee. And then Aldo Rain, Brad Pitt, in that lousy southern accent. I like Brad Pitt as an actor, so no offense, but just couldn't do the southern accent, right? But anyway, he says that back where I come from, when something is too good to be true, it isn't. And that for me is, that's a convoluted way of just saying that, which we often say, that if something's too good to be true, it isn't. But that for me is this super archetype of the entrepreneur. No one's that good. Can you just go back one slide? No one can simultaneously be creator, be savior, be the explorer, be the rebel. But that's the celebrity that is thrust on entrepreneurship increasingly. And entrepreneurship has, is people like us. And this annoys me. This annoys me because, one, it's phony. No one could be all of those things at the same time. But two, also it's too good to be true. Now, if it was just a mere annoyance, like I was irritated, should I dedicate my maiden TED talk to something that annoys me? So I thought of two things. One, why not? Because, there's no clear brief. So I could, simply because I'm annoyed, I could say it. But then there are ramifications, and that's what I would like to focus on. So could you skip to, and one more. I didn't know how this is. There's way too much text, but I'll just give you summaries of the three. So the text up there in yellow talks of an election. It's inspired by real events, inspired by a very important election. So there's this story, right? I mean, a lot of you would have followed it quite closely, where one of the candidates. Now the reason I'm not naming the candidate is not because I'm shy, but I didn't know what the TED policy on that is. Like, should I name real people? Anyway, I'll not. We know who we are talking of. So this candidate got into trouble because he questioned the family of a soldier who was martyred in Iraq, and that is supposed to be an absolute no-go, right? A politician taking on the army, that you never do. That's the opposite of what you do as a politician. And there's this interview excerpt which I put there, which was that the martyred soldier's father has asked that, what have you sacrificed? You have sacrificed nothing and you have lost no one. The candidate, quite successfully, because subsequently he won that election, could say, yeah, I've sacrificed a lot. I've sacrificed a lot because I've built great companies and I've hired lots and lots of people. It blew my mind. How can that be a defense? You don't hire people as a businessman because you're sacrificing. You're hiring people because you want to make money. You want to be famous. Stuff like that. But the entrepreneur gets away with a lot there. Second story I have here, and this I'll try and read. Am I going at a reasonable pace? Are you with me? Sorry, I'm just slightly weirded out by you not being able to see what's there and my having written these epics here. My bad. So the stuff in the red, what I end up doing in my retired phase is a lot of people, I guess people like you and others, come up to me and say, I'm thinking of starting a company, can you give me some general gyan? And that's what you do. That's what we used to do when we were here. You haven't studied for a stats exam, you find someone who can give some gyan, crashers as they were called. So similarly, a lot of people turn up and say, yeah, I have this business plan, can I talk about it to you? And I say, yeah, mostly fine. I mean, because like I said, I'm retired and not doing much. And I like entrepreneurs on the whole, even though I might be communicating that I don't. I do. I think, I'm interested in entrepreneurship. So on the left, in the red section, I have this story where this person comes in. I've changed the name of the product because, no point skewering something which is someone who's not there to defend. But this person said, opened this conversation by saying, do you know that the sale of chocolates with macadamia nuts in the US is 1.5% of all chocolate sales in the US? How many of you know macadamia nut? Yeah, some do, yeah, it's fine, but the point is, it's not really the kind of starting point for, I think, a great business idea. There's chocolates, yeah, big concern, chocolates, and then chocolates with macadamia nuts. So then this hypothesis goes as follows. Sale of this in the US is this much. Population of US is 300 million. Around 3 million Indians are more and more like people in the US. Therefore, the sale of this category in India as an opportunity is 3 divided by 300 into whatever that sale equivalent sale in India is. On this, I've contrasted it with this other business plan, which has this. So there are these women who are journalists, and they wanted my advice, and these underprivileged women in Bundelkhand. Bundelkhand really, sort of the most patriarchal place in India, which is one of the most patriarchal countries in the world. So really, really patriarchal, and these women running around as journalists, underprivileged, and they are trying to put together this company which will distribute rural news digitally in their markets. And then their hypothesis is that media is basically compromised, there is no fair reporting, there are very few women who are reporting, around 90% of reporters are men, in rural areas more so. It's just really bad, and so they want to solve the problem of rural journalism. What is the news we get from our villages? So I just described two plans: chocolate with macadamia nuts, women who want to distribute, who want to do journalism and report news in rural areas. I want a quick straw poll on which do you think will raise money faster from a VC. Option A, macadamia nuts, hands up. Option B, rural digital news run by women. Yeah, I like that the straw poll is the exact opposite of how the VC community sees this. And that's fascinating. The first kind of plan, the chocolate with macadamia nuts plan, is what I call idea arbitrage. And a lot of entrepreneurship is guilty of it. The more perceptive among you will say, hey Suhas, you launched an energy drink. So, like I said, there is hypocrisy in this presentation and guilty as charged. But chocolate with macadamia nuts raises money from a regular VC every time compared to women who want to change how rural digital news is reported. I find that very, very strange. The third one is this amazing thing that happened last year. How many of you have tweeted with hashtag Startup India? Oh yeah, I thought more. But okay, yeah, hashtag Startup India was to kick off this great event where lots of entrepreneurs, change makers went in and met the government and said, this is what needs to happen. So what I've done there, I've not added any names, these are actual quotes from a newspaper, but I'll just read you some of those things. One of them says, oh, now startups can be started in a day, this will really revolutionize stuff. So, and I think, is no one really questioning these guys when they turn up and talk about this? Because is that really the problem, that you have a business idea and it takes 7 days, if only it took 1 day I would have started this company. Really? Is that the problem to be fixed? Second person, and all of these are like well-known entrepreneurs. I know some of them, being unkind. This one I found very interesting. The relaxation of labor and financial norms. When you hear that sentence, you should have a big euphemism alert. Because in India, you get away with so much in terms of financial reporting, how you raise money, so on and so forth. You get away with so much in terms of how labor is treated in companies. I'm no socialist, like I make money. But the point is, can I really turn around and say, hey, relax those norms so that I can get these people to work for 9 days instead of 7 a week? What am I talking of? And these were comments actually made in this startup conference where everyone was present. And then there's this other one which says the government needs to play a pivotal role. And when you hear these statements, there's always that catchy acronym. Oh, the 3 Ps. What are the 3 Ps? 3 Ps is promotion, policy, and now I'm struggling, so it's Pravasi Bharatiya. That's not 3 Ps. I mean, at least stick to one language to get your acronym, right? So my point is, what I mentioned about this super archetype is that we are getting away with a lot in the name of celebrating entrepreneurship. Can you just... So I added 3 of my sort of labels on it, saying yes, Mr. President-elect, yes, you sacrificed because you made a lot of money. I get that. Yes, there is risk aversion, so I'll invest in chocolate with macadamia nut instead of figuring out a business in rural news. Yes, you have taken risks. And then there's this whole narrative of what we want from the government, because God forbid the guy making chocolate from macadamia nut has to pay sales tax. That would be terrible. That makes no sense to me. So this is sort of the rant part of my presentation, as you would have noticed. I'll try and be more constructive in the balance. This is what I thought about it subsequently. So a lot of entrepreneurship has happened. I've classified it into 2 parts. This is not based on real data, this is based on my sense of data. Part on the left is what I call then. Part on the right is what I call now. Now, the then we don't know. When the then became the now, I roughly think of it as this period when liberalization happened, and suddenly there was capital, and at all the IIMs and IITs, becoming an entrepreneur became cool, and in a few years it became cool for parents to say, yeah, my kid is an entrepreneur, because back in my day that was a problem, but it was cool within our peer groups. So a lot of entrepreneurship has happened. Can you see this graph? Am I assuming too much? Okay, in any case, I'll try and be pithy and summarize. How am I doing on time? Could you just give me an alert with 3 minutes left? So yeah, so line on the left is what I see as entrepreneurship of the poor people, where the big reason to become an entrepreneur is because you're desperate. That entrepreneurship, in terms of how many such people become entrepreneurs, was big, is big, will continue to be big. The small blue chunk is the entrepreneurship of the rich, which was not as big in terms of numerical representation, because by definition there are fewer rich people, but it created a lot of value for rich people, as is shown in the pie chart. And then the third is entrepreneurship of people like us. I don't mean the great middle. I think everyone sitting here is upper class. So it will be unfair to say middle class, because how we use middle class in India is a bit unfair. Anyway, the point I'm making is, there was this entrepreneurship before liberalization, and there's this entrepreneurship now. It has become cooler. Some of us are creating value, some of us are solving problems, but most of the people who were entrepreneurs back in the day, it's not like they are making more money now. So in the first, second level of pie charts, that very small sliver is the entrepreneurship of the poor, which is like across the road. Mashi sells gugni and paratha. Is she still there? IIM Cal people? No? Oh, so sorry. So anyway, the small entrepreneurship happening all around us, it's not as if they are making more money. The other interesting thing is, the people who get together for Startup India does not include Hernando de Soto, it does not include Amar Desain, people who should be talking of policy and entrepreneurship and stuff like that, because they are the ones who are researching entrepreneurship of the many, entrepreneurship of the desperate. But what all the share of voice, which is the third pie chart, is for people like us. Everyone wants to interview us. I've met people who are yet to start a company but have featured in Business Today and Entrepreneur magazine, and it's amazing. Like, it didn't used to happen earlier, but it is a bit odd that we get so much share of voice. Everyone's ready to interview us. We always get these stages. We always have these platforms. We are the ones shaping entrepreneurial policy in India. But what most entrepreneurs in India go through, no one is really. So it's a bit like the rich getting richer narrative, which comes through in Thomas Piketty's book, and I would really recommend that you read it, because it talks of capital in the 21st century. But it's also something which we've always known, because Leonard Cohen, whom I've cited there, wrote quite long ago that everyone knows that the fight was fixed, and the poor stay poor, the rich get rich. That's how it goes, everybody knows. And is entrepreneurship fixing it? It's not fixing that problem. We are not super people. It's entrepreneurs doing their thing. The other point here is that the share of voice has to become more rational. The celebration of entrepreneurship, I find it frankly quite over the top, as you would have guessed already. Just move on. So why does this bother me? And I started thinking, why does this bother me? I mean, we live with so many delusions. If you have read Yuval Noah Harari's *Sapiens*, any of you read that book? Should read it. Great evolutionary anthropology book. He talks of how nationalism and religion and all of our beliefs are all great delusions. So why does this delusion get to me so? Well, this delusion gets to be one because what Marx said. This joke didn't work well because the two asterisks with Marx where they lead to in the footnotes you can't read, and I'll just tell you what it says. It says Groucho, not Karl. Mind it. So, joke falling flat. So the point is, Marx basically said, Groucho, not Karl, said that I sent the club a wire. This is one of his most famous jokes. Any of you familiar with Groucho Marx, or is that like I'm doing an anachronistic thing, throwing a very old character at young people? I'm getting to be that age. So this joke is basically this. I sent this wire to the club saying I resigned from membership because any club that will accept me as member, I don't want to be part of. Which I used to find quite funny, and in a way this whole rant is about my being an entrepreneur. People think of me as a successful entrepreneur. I think I'm one. I've made the money entrepreneurs are supposed to make. But the point still is that I find it a very difficult to be part of club. The other complication is, it's not that I'm out of it. It's not that I'm doing something else now. I'm all set to become an entrepreneur again after a small retirement. So I'm saying this again with some hypocrisy. But the bigger, more serious problem is that this whole celebration of entrepreneurship is also simultaneously a celebration of the state refusing to do what it was supposed to do. The state had a contract with the public where the state had to provide healthcare, where the state had to provide education, and where the state had to do these things. More and more, as we celebrate entrepreneurship, think of two words. Think of the public and think of the customer. And think of these two as a Venn diagram with some intersection, and think of how they are moving ever closer and the intersection is becoming complete. If everything becomes the entrepreneur, if every problem the government solves by talking to entrepreneurs, if every problem is solved through public-private partnership, tomorrow there is no public because everyone is a customer. Very dangerous scenario, and therefore intelligent people like the ones in this room, when you think about what to do, if you think about entrepreneurship, you have to be aware that in some parts what you do leads to the state being absolved of its responsibilities. And like I said, everyone is a customer, and in this framework, so you think of these two Venn diagrams, these two circles, they're intersecting. There is the customer and the public, and now what you have is basically this natural resource. It's almost like you are treating your public as mineral to be auctioned to someone who says, yes, I will teach people in UP in return for this. So entrepreneurship is not a solution for everything. Very often in such forum, in such places, which is a big reason I wanted to say it in IIM Calcutta, is that here is where we celebrate entrepreneurship unabashedly. And I think we can just tone that down and be more reflective about what is this future that we are heading to. Does the state no longer need a public? Is everything going to be business? It's a tricky question. Like I said, I'm starting a rural healthcare company, but I'm starting it with this knowledge, and I would hope that more and more people, when they are getting into entrepreneurship, which is still very cool without being a super archetype like I mentioned, they do it with that knowledge, that what are the implications of their action and how complicit are they in a changing social contract. The other point is from the American elections, where if you've read Bourdieu, and if you haven't, you should. So Bourdieu is this French social thinker, and he talked about three forms of capital: economic, social, and political. And increasingly what I see it as, that here was a celebrity, a businessman, placed on such a pedestal because of this entrepreneurship amplification, that we basically didn't even ask ourselves the question that what are his plans for our country. I don't speak it as an American, I speak it as a very scared Indian about what's happening. But my point still is, we cannot start conflating entrepreneurship with being socially great, with being socially responsible. Entrepreneurship is entrepreneurship. It's the pursuit of money. When I start my next company, I'll be pursuing money. That's what it is. And when you get together in forum and you dress up your company as if it is in some other pursuit but not money, that's where I think we are being very disingenuous. And I hope intellectually curious, smart people, as I assume are sitting in this room, will take calls which are different from those who do not think about it. A great example of this, and I know in the earlier session there was some talk of how what the public wants, and I'm not sure I agree with all of it, but I thought I'd add a pop quiz because pop quizzes still happen at IIM Calcutta. Yeah? That was a trick question that never happened in our time. I just asked it, as if we went through it. We didn't. Our professors were much too nice. We didn't have attendance, and we could just fool around. But I added a pop quiz, which basically has just 2 questions, each for 5 marks. I hope your RG instincts will kick in to answer. But the first question is, which political personality recently featured in an ad by India's leading fintech startup? Oh, yeah. Not too many of you know that. Okay, yeah, interesting. And similarly, was there a startup, telecom startup, and I say startup with this big, massive asterisk because it is India's biggest behemoth. India's latest, most talked about telecom startup recently had a brand ambassador. Who was that? Exactly. And now we have this situation where we have politics, we have the state. The state is now a brand ambassador. And I do not get this. I do not get the celebration of entrepreneurship. I do not get how the entrepreneur is supposed to be nobler and purer. And these are questions which worry me. It does not mean that I won't be an entrepreneur again. It also does not mean that I won't be successful again. I'm very clear about that. I will be an entrepreneur again. I will be successful again. But the problem is, do we think about all of this? Is there a burden upon us to think about it? But like I said, Hariri has established, all of this is delusion. What we think about, our country is a delusion, our religion is a delusion. All of these are delusions we buy into because we have to live together and cooperate. So the point is, this delusion I find particularly dangerous. Why I wanted to talk about all of this was so that you can think more about entrepreneurship, because I'm sure, given how big it is now, that in this room there are many who will tomorrow be entrepreneurs. That is sort of my last slide. There are lots of footnotes, not boring you with it. Going straight to the last one. So, one often wonders at this age, middle age, you're thinking, yeah, what have I done in life and stuff? What was life for? Like really weighty questions that come up when you have had probably 5 pegs of scotch. But you think about it because you get contemplative, and then often Socrates comes up, and so I think it's basically that. It's that how Socrates said that the unexamined life is not worth living, and so I'll just close with the suggestion, and it is an assertion. Like I say, it's not. I can't argue that it is coming from first principles. My only suggestion to smart people is that unexamined entrepreneurship is not worth pursuing. That's it.